Ladies and gentlemen, Art Thiel.
Thanks for all the pressure, pal. And by the way, Bob, I really do. I appreciate that. And I also wanted to tell you that I have a shirt like that at home, too, and I can't find a match either. I was in the lobby of the Sheraton, and as is my wont when you're an entrepreneur, I was lifting up the sofa cushions and looking for change. And I found this. For those of you who are unfamiliar, this is an ancient communications device used by primitive people to convey, about food and water and common threats to the various tribes. I was just thrilled to find this piece of archaeology, and I'm planning to donate it to Mohi, right next to the stone tools and wheel exhibit that they have there for stuff that goes back quite a ways. Kidding aside, I do miss the PI. I do miss steady paychecks, but I do think we're off on something that is important, and Bob has said it better than I can, so I won't belabor the point, but I do think that this community and all communities of its size benefit by more editorial voices, more dynamism, more news coverage, and I hope to be part of that vision. I am already, and I hope to be part of it in a larger way, and I do appreciate any number of you who've come up here already and said, thanks for doing what you're doing, and we will be talking more about that a little bit later, but I do want to talk about what entrepreneurship has taught me. I've been a journalist for forever. I hadn't had to worry about a lot of things like business taxes and health care and insurance. Did I mention taxes? Yeah. So it's really, it's a whole different world in journalism, and I've really had to change my thinking, and it's amazing what's happened. When I travel now, I put my dog on the roof. I don't have fact checkers deal with my columns anymore. I just go ahead and say whatever I want. And I've taken to talking to empty chairs. So I want to get into the several things that have happened. This turns out to be a fairly busy news time in sports. When we booked this, 4 months ago with Sue and others, and Bob said, yeah. I said, sure. There'll be something going on. Woohoo. It was altogether remarkable. And I was going to start with the Mariners by saying that I plan to make money before the Mariners ever get back to contention. You can take that any way you want. The Mariners have, I think at this moment, are 10 games behind the Oakland A's, which I still can't figure out how that's like Shaquille O'Neal being behind Danny DeVito. It should be the other way. But the Mariners have consistently underperformed for about the last 10 years, and I know that there are many Mariner fans here, and I suffer with you. It's very difficult to be funny over 100-loss seasons 5 years in a row. But this year, it's better. There's been an uptick, and I will say, to the Mariners' credit, they finally developed that solid core of 240 hitting hitters. Just one guy, just one big stick. I don't think it's Luis Jimenez, who joined the team after 13 years in the minor leagues. These are not the kinds of seedlings from which strong oaks grow. I wanted to touch on our other sports teams too. The Sounders, again, have had a remarkable run, as they always appear to do at this time, only to fall short in the playoffs. They are one player short. They need somebody who, big, smart, aggressive, does the right thing at the right time, kind of a Michelle Obama type. And I think that's all they need to win an MLS title. The other thing would be getting Casey Keller out of the press box and back where he belongs, back in goal with the Sounders. I meant that to do that. That was a flag by a replacement ref. There you go. One of the best stories this fall has been with the Seahawks and the arrival of rookie quarterback Russell Wilson. For those of you who haven't followed the story, Russell Wilson was a third-round draft choice out of Wisconsin, who is slightly shorter than this podium. But he was so successful throughout training camp, the OTAs, and the preseason that Pete Carroll made him the starting quarterback. I actually was so impressed with this guy, and I had a chance to talk to him, and many other people who have talked to him were just so impressed. I was actually considering height reduction surgery, especially if I had to fly coach. So it unfortunately didn't work out so well for him this last Sunday. The Arizona Cardinals in the Seahawks opener seem to have rushed everybody whose mortgage is underwater in Arizona. There were 10,000 people in Russell Wilson's face, and of course Russell's face being lower, it was the chest and the arms, and it was kind of a problem for him. I made this prediction with Mike Gastineau on KJR. I said I thought the Seahawks were going to lose their opener and make the playoffs. And I still think that's going to be the case, because there's a lot going on there that if Russell Wilson doesn't get maimed or run over by other opponents, that the Seahawks really have a quality defense and a lot of talent elsewhere, but they're just so way too young on the offense, and Wilson's going to have to grow up fast. I think he will. I wish I could say the same about the University of Washington football team, which is composed almost entirely of redshirt freshmen. That is a very difficult enterprise to win in Pac-12 football. Of course, it's very difficult. Don was mentioning his passion for college football and its relationship to the university, and I'm always reminded of Groucho Marx's famous line. He said, "This football team needs a college it can be proud of." Groucho said that in a movie in 1933, and it's never changed. Our former University of Washington president, Mark Emmert, is now president of the NCAA. When all of these controversies and scandals have just besieged the sport, and I had a chance to see Mark after he'd taken the job, and I asked him, given a choice, would you rather do this job or be campaign chair for the Tobacco for Tots campaign? And he claimed he wanted to keep doing the job, but I do think the Huskies are unfortunately going to miss a bowl game. Those of you who were counting on going to the Microsoft, Amazon Fiesta Bowl, or whatever it might be named by the time they get there, I wouldn't disturb your holiday bowl season. It's just too tough a deal to come back from 0-12. A lot of people assume that, oh, well, just get a new coach and a couple players and it'll be fine. No. When you get a deep ditch in college football, it takes a long time to get back out. And that's what I think Sarkisian's a good coach, like a lot of what he does, but it's really difficult in a changed universe in college sports, and I'll touch on this real briefly. When Don James was in charge, he had a 105 scholarship limit. Now it's 85. And all those other players who've got marginal to good college athletic talent are spread all over the country. As it turned out, the best of them wound up at LSU, as you may have seen over the weekend, 41-3. I said that playing on a September summer night in LSU was worse than going to a Russian winter in a thong. It's just, the odds are just incredible. You'll never survive because the program is big, 92,000 people, and they're very pleasant, which is almost worse because they kill you with kindness in the parking lot and then they beat the crap out of your football team on the field. I want to turn to what I think is probably the topic du jour these days, the arena, the Soto Arena that just reached a milestone, not a capstone, but a milestone yesterday when the City Council approved their amended agreement for Chris Hansen's $490 million arena in Soto. And before I go into that agreement, I wanted to explain some stuff about that seems to get overlooked in the whole conversation. My sports journalism job allowed me to travel to all the major markets in the country, and I didn't really set out on a scouting tour of these cities, but I can say with a little help from Google that no metro market in the country is attempting to do what we're attempting to do in Soto, which is to cram in a square mile the downtown business district, a deep water port, and 3 sports entertainment stadiums. Nobody does that. You know what they call the port in Los Angeles? They call it Long Beach. In San Francisco, they call the port Oakland. They're not doing all of this stuff in one place. Now, however you think the port is doing it and however you think the traffic is managed, it's a lot of junk to cram into one spot. And we're great at that in Seattle because if I'm sure all of you know, and we just take it for granted and don't even think about it, we only have one north-south freeway in this town. And we have no east-west freeways because east-west in Seattle is about a block and a half. We tried to fix Mercer mess. It took us 44 years to make it worse. We have a bus tunnel that goes 1 mile. We've got a monorail that goes 1 mile. We've got a trolley that goes 1 mile. And none of them are connected. When Mayor McGinn and King County Executive Dow Constantine brought forth the package that Chris Hansen said was going to work in Soto, they said one of the reasons it will work from a transportation standpoint is because that area is a hub of transportation. If any of you have ever ridden a bicycle, you know the hub of the wheel moves a lot more slowly than the part out here. And that's exactly what happens when you put 3 sports stadiums in a hub. Things get a little tight. And I don't want to parse out all the details of how that's going to be resolved. It's just a difficult enterprise. But the point there is to say that I congratulate the City Council and Chris Hansen for the deal yesterday because I didn't think they would do it. I didn't think the city was going to stand up to Hansen, and I didn't think Hansen had the community sensibility to be willing to divert revenue that was going to go to his debt retirement of the building and spend it on traffic mitigation and helping the Key Arena. And the reason this is such a big deal is because this whole project was backwards. We've never done this before. This is the first time an owner has put a stake in the ground and said, this is where I want my place, now I'll take questions. Just hasn't happened. And as the example of the converse, in 1968, Seattle passed a series of bond measures that created Metro and a number of other very virtuous things, including the late lamented King Dome. In 1968, that bond issue passed. It took them 4 years to site the King Dome. 4 years. If you think this project's moved slowly now, imagine if Chris said, well, here's $290 million. Find me a place, Seattle. Not going to work. So I don't blame Hansen for saying, I have got to take the initiative and put my stake in the ground where I think it's going to work. Did he know about the ports issues? No. Did he know about the other traffic issues with Costco and Rabanco and all the other principals down in there? No. He didn't know it. He thought it was going to be like the Embarcadero in San Francisco, where there was truly abandoned waterfront that could accommodate a baseball park. There's nothing abandoned down on our waterfront. It's all busy, it's all active, and it's a real shoehorn. But in the 8 months since this story became public, the county council has amended the original agreement, the city council has amended the agreement, and now together they will come up with a comprehensive document that will go forward as the template to try to build this arena in less than a year. This is lightning speed. Doesn't seem like it because we live in a 24/7 world, and my phone now is just alive with tweets, which is actually just causes my phone to vibrate, which is kind of fun. But what happened in that agreement shows us what can be done if the parties on each side have no agenda to screw the other. It was really impressive how much the city, and it's easy to bash the politicians, and I've done plenty of it, but it was remarkable that rather than capitulate to Hansen's demands and accept the mayor's wisdom and the county executive's wisdom that this was a good deal, they said, let's check it out. Let's scrutinize it. Let's get outside counsel. Let's get accountants and lawyers and land use planners, and let's see what we can do. And they came up with an agreement that I think is remarkable. Is it the end of the road? No. There's still multiple issues, including an environmental impact statement that will require this project to look at alternative sites, which will include Key Arena. That's not going to work. But any other sites that may come up, it's a year out. And then he can, if all goes well and he can turn shovel, he's going to have at least 3 years before that arena is up and ready. Meantime, they're going to have to build or upgrade Key Arena to try to put in a new team for up to 3 years, and he hasn't found that team yet or paid for it. When Hansen's bill comes due for the purchases of land and the skin he's going to have in the arena game, plus the cost of the team or teams if the NHL comes along, it's going to approach $1 billion. And that's private equity. That's business capital going into this so that municipal governments don't have to do it. They have to contribute a little bit, but this is a real light touch on the community, and it really improved it for, I think, the security protections for the taxpayer, and will help the port get to yes on this project. They're still digging in. They're still saying, no, we don't know what all this is about. That's fine. That $40 million that Hansen is taken, that $40 million that Hansen is given to the city for the infrastructure fund is seed money. It's not complete. They're going to hit up the port for $40 million to contribute to that same study. They're going to seek state and federal matching funds. And so we might actually just have a solution to a problem that we've only known about for 25 years once this gets done. And it's all because The sports arena forced us into action to solve a problem. I don't think we can do that with every sport. It's going to be real hard for, Russell Wilson to come in here and finish the deep bore tunnel. It's just too short. He just can't dig that out. But it was an achievement, and I can say, as a longtime Seattleite, I'm proud of our private investors. I'm proud of the city council. It was a heck of a deal and a heck of an achievement. I hope you all appreciate that. Now, questions, answers, confusion, bewilderment. Let's engage in some of that for the next few minutes. We have a couple of microphones. Thank you.
I have a quick question. I noticed you talked about a lot of the teams, but you missed one of my favorites, the one that, as far as I can tell, is the only winning team in our area, the Storm. Can you talk about them?
I hate to break the news to you, but they're not winning. I did overlook the Storm. They are 13-15. Last night they lost in Atlanta. They've got a weird deal going, the Olympic break. Lauren Jackson and Sue Bird are not themselves. Just to give you a little background, women's basketball makes very little money, actually makes no money, and the salaries here are not very good. So good professional women's basketball players need to make all of their money overseas. They get compensated much better in Russia, in China, and many other places. So the WNBA becomes almost ancillary to the star players, and they play a much more rigorous schedule than NBA players, who just have the 82-game season, playoffs, and they're on the beach in Cannes. And the women players really have to go all year, all around the globe, and it really takes a toll on how much energy they can bring to a WNBA season. And I think with two Olympians, Bird and Jackson, the Storm are suffering a bit. So they may be able to get it together in time for the playoffs, but it's at the end of the month, and they've got to get it going fast.
Hi, I saw the Seahawks game, and Russell Wilson did do a great job, but the receivers were dropping the ball. What is the head coach and the receivers coach, what are they saying to those receivers about catching the ball and winning football games? Thank you.
One word, Velcro. A lot of what you saw was operator error on the part of the wide receivers, but it's also the kind of timing issue that Wilson is yet to get with the receiver corps. It only stands to reason. He's only been a pro for a couple of months, and they have not worked with him. Doug Baldwin was out the entire preseason. Braylon Edwards is new. And even though he had 5 shots, he didn't hit it. I would say if you had Matt Flynn in that situation, you probably would have got a touchdown. But if you'd had Matt Flynn for the whole drive, you may not have gotten there. That's how close the talent disparity is. Wilson is the more talented quarterback. Flynn is more experienced. Carroll went for the talent, and he just isn't ready to make those kinds of clutch passes on the money to the receivers, and you have to expect a few drops. It's going to happen during the course of the season. But, boy, it would have been nice to have Kellen Winslow in there for a catch like that. But they cut him rather than pay $3.3 million.
Art, a lot's been said, and I understand, I think, the traffic congestion issue raised particularly by the port. Friends of mine keep saying most of the traffic created by the stadiums is at night, not during the day. Can you help with understanding where the congestion issue is?
Let's walk down there afterwards. We're going to see. What happens is, and I've had an occasion to talk to some people about this, is that hay farmers and apple growers and cherry growers in central Washington, they keep a Mariners pocket schedule ready to look, because those produce and other time-sensitive products that have to get on the ships in the Port of Seattle it's really important to be able to get from central and eastern Washington to the port right away. If they know there's a ball game, they have to start shipping well ahead of the game start, because they don't want to have anything go wrong. They have to have some flex time for Snoqualmie Pass or, Issaquah, or wherever the traffic mess is going to be. And so they want to get there early. That early pressure to avoid game pressure puts more trucks on the road earlier in the day. And the other part of it is that it's been popularly stated that the port closes its gates at 4:30, ball games start typically at 7. All true. But all those trucks that are being loaded in the port have to come out. And they can come out at most any time. I realize that the port does not run a 24-hour labor shift to load those things, but there's a lot of port traffic that gets on the streets of SoDo after 4:30. And I'm not saying that I'm the expert on this, but I do take the City of Seattle's word for it, because it's on their website. 10 years ago, they created a solution for the port, the Lander Street overpass, not the be-all and end-all, but they said that's what we will do for the port to help mitigate the impacts of the football and baseball stadiums. In 2008, they decided, Paul Allen's building a lot of nice stuff over here by Mercer. Let's go help him out. And they took the money for the Lander Street flyover to Mercer. How's that working for you? So what happens is that the screaming priority of the moment gets the attention of municipal governments. And Mercer Street was a screaming priority because both Paul Allen and Jeff Bezos swing a big stick in that area. And now, because this arena has come here, the port says, our turn. You broke commitments before. Now it's time to address our concerns. That's what the $40 million is for. And the problem has always been, because we have only one north-south freeway, because we have nothing going east-west, that particular area is always going to be a choke point, because you've got downtown, entertainment district, Deepwater Port. It's just part of the deal. So you're going to have to throw a ton of money to resolve all of those things to make it more manageable, and that's what's going to happen.
All right, thank you. As much as I enjoy the subject of your writing, I also really enjoy the quality of your writing. I think you're really a fine writer. And I wonder who are the authors and any of the books you've read recently that you recommend to us. I suspect they're good quality.
Oh, I would say Marvel Comics, DC Comics. Well, it's I have favorite authors. One of them is our local hero, Tom Robbins. I find one of my heroes, some of you who are a little older might remember a columnist by the name of Jim Murray of the Los Angeles Times, a guy I admired very much, who made really a breakthrough in journalism for being sharp with the wit and learned with the keyboard. And I think a lot of what sort of dismays me right now, and getting back to the educational point, is how little our language is regarded as far as a valuable tool for communicating for all of us. The young people that I see that we have as interns or that I help with writing simply don't have the appreciation for it. And I imagine that if Shakespeare were alive, he would look at our writing and say, my gosh, this is just a disgraceful decay here. But I think what really keeps me going, and this is something that people ask me, well, what's your favorite sport? Or my favorite sport is writing, because that has to be the priority for all journalists. You need to have knowledge of subject. You need to understand a lot of things about story content, but you have to really enjoy the art of writing, to be able to put something together in an original, coherent, compelling way that either provides a chuckle or gives a little bit of insight and helps people think about a subject they think is very familiar to them in a slightly different way. And that's the kind of standard that I'd like to see maintained in a decaying world of journalism. It's a very difficult enterprise because all that seems to be required these days is more, faster, from a lower common denominator. I hate that.
Pardon me, Art, but I have to ask this question. The NFL commissioner seems to have an interesting judge, jury, and executioner approach to his job. What do you think of NFL jurisprudence?
He sounds like a sports columnist to me. There is a big push by Goodell to try to change the image of the NFL, its players, and its conduct, and he's determined to do it with almost independent of the rules that the NFL has set up. And I think he's a little overzealous. The problem with doing it in the middle of the season is that you can't do it in the middle of the season. And even, I think his intentions are sound, but I think he's also trampling on the game a bit. The issue that I think is much more serious, and I think a lot of people understand this, is the concussion issue, because it is a threat to every child who puts on a football helmet. And the NFL is trying to be proactive, and I would commend Goodell for the emphasis he's putting on concussions. And it resonates here in Seattle because Goodell, to his everlasting credit, chose the head of Harborview to be the NFL's brain trauma specialist, Dr. Richard Ellenbogen. Some of you may know him. I've gotten acquainted with him, and he made a very trenchant point about why he got involved. And he got involved with one requirement. NFL, you don't pay me a dime. I don't want to be your houseboy. And they don't pay him. It's a volunteer deal. His son played football. Son got knocked out during the game. His wife came up to him and said, "What are you going to do about this?" And since then, Ellenbogen, along with other medical professionals around the country, and Goodell's office, changed the way the game is played because they finally elevated safety to the level it should be. You're going to hear players grouse because they're 20, they're invincible, they don't care, they just want to make the tackle or the great catch or whatever. But we're reading story after story. Last week, Sports Illustrated, you should all get a copy of it. Jim McMahon, the former Chicago Bears quarterback, is on the cover. It talks about the consequences of his brain disabilities from too many repeated blows to the head while he's playing football, and the consequences to his wife, who basically has become a 24-hour caregiver at the age of, in his early 50s. So as much as judge, jury, and executioner for bad plays or illegal plays like the Bountygate issue is an overreach, I think he needs to continue to reach for safety first. That's good. Thank you very much.
Seattle Rotary Online is made possible in part by a grant from First Choice Health, working with the Washington Health Information Collaborative to use technology to bring better health care to patients throughout the Pacific Northwest. First Choice Health.